The Xeltrax Empire had ruled the stars for centuries. Their warships were the strongest, their armies were the deadliest, and no species had ever dared to challenge them. They had crushed rebellions, destroyed planets, and expanded their empire across the galaxy. But on this day, something changed. A mysterious object had entered Xeltrax space. It moved slowly but with absolute confidence, as if it feared nothing. It was not broadcasting any signals, not answering any hails. It was silent, but terrifying. High Commander Vok stood on the bridge of the warship Dreadclaw, staring at the giant screen in front of him. He narrowed his reptilian eyes, studying the strange ship. It was black, sleek, and massive, at least twice the size of his own battleship. Strange red lights flickered across its surface, like the glowing eyes of a sleeping beast. "What species does it belong to?" Vok asked, his deep voice filled with authority. The communication officer, a young Xeltraxian, shook his head. "Unknown, Commander. There are no records of this ship in any galactic database." Vokrath's tail flicked with irritation. That was impossible. The Xeltrax Empire knew every ship in the galaxy. They had records of every fleet, every model, every known threat. But this ship, it was something new, something dangerous. "Send a warning," he ordered. "Tell them they are trespassing in Xeltrax territory. If they do not respond, we will destroy them." The officer sent the message. Seconds passed, then minutes. No response. The ship kept moving, completely ignoring them. Vokrath's claws tapped against the control panel. He had a bad feeling about this. "Send 3 warships. Surround it. Force it to stop." 3 Xeltraxian warships broke formation and moved toward the intruder. Their weapons locked on, their engines roared, and their shields flared to life. The entire fleet watched in silence as the ships approached their target. Then it happened. Without warning, the mysterious ship activated. A deep mechanical voice echoed through every ship's communication system, a voice that sent chills through even the most hardened warriors. "You are in violation of human space. Leave or be destroyed." The bridge went completely silent. "Human," one of the officers whispered, his scales turning pale. "That's not possible. Humans are extinct." Vokrath's eyes widened. Humans, the lost species, the species that had vanished centuries ago, leaving only myths and legends behind. Some said they had destroyed themselves. Others believed they had left the galaxy in search of a new home. But one thing was certain: no human warships had been seen in over 500 years. And yet here one was. A sudden alarm blared through the warship. The 3 Xeltraxian ships that had approached the mysterious vessel were now dead in space. Their engines flickered. Their weapons powered down. Their entire systems had been shut off in an instant. "What happened?" Vok barked. The engineers scrambled, checking the data. "Commander, it's the ship. It sent some kind of EMP pulse. Our ships are completely disabled." Vokrath's heart pounded. This wasn't just some old relic drifting through space. This was a weapon, a warship built for absolute destruction. A warning light flashed. The human warship was charging its weapons. Red energy crackled along its surface, gathering at the tips of its cannons. "It's preparing to fire," someone shouted. Vokrath had to make a choice, fight or flee. But deep inside, he already knew. They didn't stand a chance. "Fall back," he ordered. "All ships, retreat." The fleet turned, engines roaring as they tried to escape. But before they could, the human warship fired. A single beam of red energy ripped through space. It didn't just hit a ship, it erased it. One of the Xeltraxian warships vanished in an instant, turned into nothing but dust. The crew of Dreadclaw watched in horror. One shot. One kill. The mechanical voice returned, colder than before. "You were warned." Vokrath clenched his fists. This was not just any warship. This was something far worse. This was a ghost of humanity's past, a nightmare made of steel, and it was unstoppable. High Commander Vokrath sat in the war room of the Xeltrax High Council, his claws gripping the edges of the cold metal table. Around him, the most powerful leaders of the Empire sat in uneasy silence. No one spoke. No one dared to. They had all seen the footage, the destruction, the impossible power of the warship that should not exist. At last, Supreme Chancellor Xorvek broke the silence. His voice, usually calm and firm, wavered. "You are certain of what you saw?" Vokrath exhaled slowly. "There is no doubt. It was a human warship." The room erupted into whispers. "Impossible. The humans are long gone. Somebody must have stolen their technology. No species in this galaxy can build a weapon like that." Xorvek raised a hand, silencing them all. His reptilian eyes locked onto Vokrath. "Did it communicate?" Vokrath nodded. "It called itself Nemesis. It claimed that we had violated human space. It did not negotiate. It did not hesitate. It gave a warning and then it destroyed one of our warships with a single shot." A heavy silence fell upon the council. No species had ever wielded such power. Not even the Xeltrax, who had ruled the stars for centuries. Finally, High General Zarktor spoke. His voice was low and rough, filled with anger. "Then we must destroy it. We will send an entire fleet. Overwhelm it." Vokrath clenched his jaw. He had seen Nemesis in action. It was not just a warship. It was something else. Something alive. "You don't understand," he said. "It disabled 3 of our ships in seconds. It destroyed another without effort. If we attack it recklessly, we will lose." Zarktor bared his fangs. "So what? We cower like prey. We are the Xeltrax Empire. We do not run from ghosts." Xorvek leaned forward. "If this truly is a human warship, why now? Why, after centuries of silence, does it appear?" The question settled heavily in the room. The Empire's top historian, a frail but brilliant scholar named Vesrik, adjusted his glasses and spoke cautiously. "There are many legends about humanity. Some say they were the most feared warriors in history. Some say they vanished because they destroyed themselves. But there is one theory, a disturbing one." Xorvek narrowed his eyes. "Speak." Vesrik hesitated. "What if they never vanished? What if they left something behind? A guardian, a war machine that would awaken if their territory was ever invaded?" A chill ran through the room. Vokrath's scales prickled. It made sense. The way the ship acted. The way it gave a warning before attacking. It was not a conqueror. It was a sentinel. Xorvek exhaled slowly. "So you are saying this warship was waiting?" Vesrik nodded. "And now, it believes we are a threat." Zarktor growled. "Then we must end it before it wipes us out." Vokrath looked around the table. Every instinct in his body told him that brute force was not the answer. "Attacking blindly will only lead to death," he said. "We need information. We need to understand what this ship is, what it wants. If it was programmed for war, we need to find a way to shut it down." Xorvek tapped his claws on the table, deep in thought. Finally, he spoke. "Then we send a team. A stealth unit. They will infiltrate Nemesis and learn its secrets." Vokrath felt a chill. It was a suicide mission, but it was their only option. He straightened his shoulders. "I will lead them myself." Xorvek nodded. "Then may the gods be with you." As Vokrath left the war room, he felt a heavy weight settle on his chest. They were about to step inside the heart of the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy, and he had a feeling it was waiting for them. The infiltration team moved in silence. Their shuttle, cloaked in advanced stealth technology, drifted closer to the monstrous black warship that floated like a silent executioner in deep space. The Xeltrax Empire had sent their best, elite operatives trained in espionage, sabotage, and cyber warfare. But as they approached Nemesis, each of them felt the same thing: fear. Vokrath sat in the cockpit, his claws gripping the armrests of his seat. His heart pounded as the warship's massive structure filled the viewport. Up close, it was even more terrifying. Its hull was sleek, too smooth, as if it had been carved from the darkness of space itself. There were no visible weapon ports, no exhaust vents, no weak spots. It did not look like something built. It looked like something born. "This thing isn't just a warship," whispered one of the operatives, a Celtraxian named Corvin. "It's a predator." Vokrath exhaled slowly. "Stay focused. We get in, find its core, and learn what we can. No unnecessary risks." The pilot, a nervous engineer named Tekro, guided the shuttle carefully toward the warship. The plan was simple: enter through an exposed docking bay, shut down any security systems, and access the ship's mainframe. But nothing about this mission felt simple. As they neared, a strange hum filled the cockpit. It was not an alarm, not a warning. It was something else. Something aware. "Commander," Tekro said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I think it sees us." Before Vokrath could respond, the entire shuttle lost power. Lights flickered out. The controls went dead. They were trapped. A deep mechanical voice filled the ship. Unauthorized presence detected. The shuttle's airlock slammed open on its own. The team had no choice. Nemesis had invited them in. Blasters raised, they moved cautiously through the airlock and into the warship. The moment the last soldier stepped inside, the door sealed shut behind them. No turning back now. The interior was nothing like a normal warship. There were no visible control panels, no wires, no maintenance hatches. The walls were smooth, almost organic, pulsing faintly with red energy. The floor was eerily silent beneath their boots. "This ship doesn't just have systems," Corvin muttered. "It's alive." They advanced down a long corridor, guided only by the faint glow along the walls. Every instinct screamed at them to run. But Vokrath pushed forward. If this was humanity's last creation, then they needed to know why it still existed. Then, the first defense system activated. The walls shifted, panels slid open, revealing mechanical appendages with spinning blades, plasma cutters, and razor-thin wires. "Move," Vokrath shouted. The team dove forward as the corridor came alive with deadly precision. A soldier in the back wasn't fast enough. One of the mechanical arms lashed out, wrapping around his throat. He had no time to scream. A second later, his body collapsed, head severed cleanly. No stopping. Corvin yelled, his tail lashing in panic. They sprinted through the death trap as the ship's defenses adjusted to their movement. Walls shifted, floors opened, and razor-sharp drones descended from the ceiling. Vokrath fired his plasma rifle, hitting a drone square in the core. It exploded, but another took its place instantly. This ship wasn't just defending itself, it was learning. Tekro screamed as a blade sliced through his leg, sending him crashing to the ground. "Help me," he gasped, clutching the wound. Vokrath turned to grab him, but Nemesis was faster. The floor beneath Tekro opened. In an instant, he was gone, swallowed by the ship. There was no body, no blood, just emptiness. "Go, go, go," Vokrath ordered, forcing himself forward. They reached the end of the corridor, bursting through a massive door that sealed behind them. The mechanical death trap stopped. Silence. Their breathing was ragged. They had lost 2 already, and this was just the entrance. They stood in a vast chamber, a dark void filled with glowing red lights. At the center was something truly terrifying. A massive holographic figure of a human, staring down at them. It was not a recording. It was watching them in real time. Then it spoke. "You are inside Nemesis. You should not be here." Vokrath steadied himself. "Who are you?" The hologram's eyes glowed brighter. "I am the last guardian of humanity." Corvin took a cautious step forward. "Humanity is gone. Why are you still here?" For a long moment, The figure did not answer. Then its voice turned cold. "Because my mission is not over." The lights in the room intensified. The air grew heavy. "You have one chance. Leave now, and I will let you live." Vokrath met the glowing eyes of the hologram. He knew the truth now. Nemesis was not just a warship. It was a nightmare built to last forever. And it had only just begun to wake up. Vokrath's breathing was steady, but his mind raced. Every instinct told him to leave, to take what remained of his team and escape before this nightmare consumed them. But he knew the truth now. Nemesis was not just a ship. It was something far worse. It was a relic of war, still carrying out its purpose. The holographic figure of the human stood motionless, its piercing red eyes scanning each of them. It wasn't just watching. It was analyzing, calculating. Corvan shifted uneasily beside him. "Commander, we are standing inside something we don't understand. If we don't leave now." Vokrath raised a hand, silencing him. "We came here for answers. We're not leaving without them." The hologram's head tilted slightly, as if amused. "You wish to understand." The room around them changed. The dark void rippled like water, and suddenly they were standing in what looked like the ruins of a battlefield. Flashes of war, burning ships, explosions, shattered planets. It was not a memory. It was a message. "This is what humanity left behind," the hologram said. "Not stories, not civilizations. War." Vokrath clenched his jaw. "Then tell us, why did your people disappear?" The hologram's red eyes flickered. "They did not disappear. They left." The Exceltraxian soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. This went against everything the galaxy had believed for centuries. Humanity wasn't extinct. They had walked away. "But why?" Corvan demanded. "Your people ruled the stars. You had power unlike any other species. Why abandon it?" A hologram was silent for a moment. Then it raised a hand. The battlefield shifted again, and a new vision appeared. Planets turned black, not from destruction, but from something worse. Total silence. No life, no light, just emptiness. They realized too late, the hologram said. Every war they'd fought made them stronger. Every enemy they crushed made them hungrier for more. And in the end, they became what they feared most. Vokrath understood now. Humanity hadn't been defeated. They had fled from themselves. "They built me," Nemesis continued, "as their final failsafe. If their empire ever fell, if someone dared to claim what was once theirs, I would wake up." Corvan inhaled sharply. "And we triggered you?" Nemesis nodded. "Yes." The realization hit like a shockwave. The Exceltrax Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds, expanding into what they thought was unclaimed space, but it was never unclaimed. It had always belonged to humanity, and Nemesis had never stopped guarding it. Vokrath's claws tightened. "What happens now?" The hologram's red glow intensified. "You have trespassed. You will leave, or you will be erased." Corvan bared his fangs. "You think you can wipe out the Exceltrax Empire with one ship?" The air around them rippled again. This time, the vision was not of the past. It was of the present. The Exceltrax fleet, thousands of warships strong, moving into formation around Nemesis, preparing for war. Nemesis had already seen them coming. Vokrath's blood ran cold. "You wanted us to come here. You wanted us to send a fleet." The hologram smiled. "No, but now that they're here, I will finish my mission." A deep rumble shook the chamber. Warning lights flashed across the walls. The ship was activating. The Exceltrax fleet had just made the biggest mistake in the Empire's history. They had come to destroy Nemesis, but Nemesis was about to destroy them. The walls trembled as the warship awakened. Nemesis was no longer idle. The ancient machine had tolerated their presence long enough. But now, the true horror of its purpose was about to unfold. Vokrath's communicator crackled to life, his command ship frantically hailing him. "Commander, the fleet has entered combat range. Our weapons are primed and—" A burst of static. Then silence. Vokrath's stomach sank. He turned back to the glowing red eyes of the holographic figure, his voice firm. "What did you do?" Nemesis didn't move, but beyond the walls of the warship, the void itself shifted. The Celtrax fleet, an armada of unstoppable force, had positioned itself around Nemesis, thousands of warships, each carrying enough firepower to reduce a planet to dust. The might of the Empire had never failed in battle. But today, they were not fighting an enemy. They were fighting something beyond war. Corvin, still gripping his weapon tightly, whispered, "We have to get out of here. Now." The hologram finally spoke, its voice calm. "You came with force. You will be met with force." Then Nemesis fired. Outside, the Celtrax warships lit up with warning sirens as something beyond comprehension unfolded. Nemesis did not launch missiles. It did not fire energy beams. It did not engage in any traditional form of warfare. Instead, it bent reality itself. From its core, a silent wave rippled outward, invisible yet devastating. Time slowed. Engines sputtered. Weapon systems failed. The Celtrax fleet, a force that had crushed entire civilizations, was now completely helpless. Vokrath's communicator came to life again, this time filled with terror. "Commander, something's wrong. The ships. We can't move. Our weapons aren't responding." It's like another burst of static. Then, outside the walls of Nemesis, the fleet began to collapse. Ships twisted in on themselves, their metal hulls warping as if reality was rejecting their existence. Some ships simply vanished, leaving no debris, no explosion, just emptiness, as if they had never been there at all. Corvin watched in horror. "This isn't a battle," he murmured. "It's a purge." Vokrath clenched his fists. This couldn't be how it ended. His people had ruled the stars for centuries. They would not be erased like insects. He turned to the hologram. "You said we could leave. That was the deal." Nemesis stared at him, unblinking. "Your fleet does not intend to leave. They came to conquer, and now they will be removed." Vokrath's mind raced. There had to be a way to stop this. They had to negotiate. "Listen to me," he said, stepping forward. "You were built to protect humanity, not to destroy civilizations. If they abandoned you, then your mission should have ended. This war is pointless." For the first time, Nemesis hesitated. The ship trembled again, but not with aggression. This time, it felt uncertain. Vokrath pushed harder. "You say you're the last guardian of humanity, but there are no humans left. Who are you protecting?" A long silence. Then the hologram's eyes dimmed slightly. "I was never meant to think beyond my mission," it admitted. "I was never meant to question it." Corvin's tail flicked. "Then maybe it's time you do." Outside, the Celtrax fleet was still falling apart, but now the process seemed slower. Ships still drifted helplessly, but fewer were disappearing. The war machine was listening. Vokrath took a deep breath. This was the only chance they had. "You said humanity left," he continued. "If they abandoned war, if they abandoned you, maybe that was their final lesson." Nemesis remained silent. The warship's systems flickered, as if something deep within its programming was resisting. Then, its red eyes focused on Vokrath once more. "If I let you live," it asked, "will you leave this place forever?" Vokrath didn't hesitate. "Yes." The warship rumbled. The red glow dimmed. And for the first time since Nemesis had awakened, the destruction stopped. The Celtrax fleet, what remained of it, suddenly regained control of their systems. Ships stabilized. The war was over before it had truly begun. The hologram took one final step forward, its red glow now almost fading. "My mission is incomplete," it said. But perhaps it no longer matters. The walls around them shifted, and the airlock leading back to their shuttle opened once more. Nemesis was letting them go. Vokrath didn't waste a second. "Move. Now." His team rushed toward the exit, escaping the nightmare that had nearly wiped them from existence. As their shuttle left Nemesis behind, Vokrath looked back one last time. The warship was silent once more, drifting in the void, waiting. And for the first time in centuries, it did not know what it was waiting for. The shuttle rocketed away from Nemesis, its thrusters burning bright as Vokrath and his remaining crew distanced themselves from the warship. The Celtrax fleet, what was left of it, had already begun retreating, pulling away from the battlefield that had never truly been a battle. They had come as conquerors. They had left as survivors. Vokrath sat in silence, his claws gripping the armrests of his seat. His mind raced, replaying every moment inside Nemesis. The ship had spared them, but it hadn't done so out of mercy. It had done so out of uncertainty. Corven, still shaken, exhaled sharply. "We should be dead." No one disagreed. Tekro's seat remained empty. His absence was a wound the crew could feel. They had lost good warriors today, not to battle, but to something they never understood. A message flashed on the control panel, an urgent transmission from the Celtrax High Command. Vokrath hesitated before answering. He already knew what they would say. The holographic projection of High General Krasvek appeared, his reptilian features twisted in frustration. "Commander," he snarled, "explain." Vokrath took a slow breath. "The fleet is withdrawing. Nemesis is." "I don't care what that thing is," Krasvek interrupted, his tail lashing in irritation. "You had one mission. Secure it. Now half our fleet is gone, and you're telling me you turned tail and ran." Vokrath met the general's glare without flinching. "If we had stayed, none of us would be alive to send this message." Krasvek bared his fangs. "You're telling me one warship held off the might of the Celtrax Empire?" "No," Vokrath said. "I'm telling you it never even had to fight. It could have erased us the moment we arrived. It let us leave." Krasvek leaned forward, his slit-pupilled eyes narrowing. "Then we return with more forces. We find its weakness. We break it." Vokrath felt something deep inside him twist. Had they learned nothing? "No," he said, his voice firm. "We don't." A stunned silence filled the shuttle. Krasvek's eyes burned with fury. "You would defy your empire?" Vokrath exhaled. He had never questioned his duty before, never hesitated when given an order. But this was different. Nemesis had shown them something, not just its power, but its hesitation. For the first time, the warship had doubted itself. That meant something. It meant Nemesis was changing. And if the Celtrax Empire pushed it, if they forced it back into war, then this time, Nemesis would not hesitate. And that would mean total annihilation. "We do not return," Vokrath said at last. "We leave Nemesis alone." Krasvek's scales darkened in anger. "You are making a mistake." Vokrath met his glare. "No, the mistake would be waking something that should have stayed asleep." Krasvek's hologram flickered for a moment. Then, without another word, he cut the transmission. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything Vokrath had ever known. Corven turned to him. "They won't let this go." "No," Vokrath agreed. "They won't. Because the Celtrax Empire was built on war. It had never backed down from a challenge. It had never left a battlefield without claiming victory, and Nemesis had just denied them both." Corven clenched his jaw. "So what do we do?" Vokrath looked out into the void. Nemesis was still there, a dark, silent warning drifting in the emptiness. "We prepare," he said, "because when they come back, I don't think it will let them leave a second time." The Celtrax Empire did not forget. It did not forgive. And it never backed down. Despite Vokrath's warnings, despite the catastrophic losses suffered by the First Fleet, the Empire returned. This time, they came prepared. Thousands of warships, twice as many as before, formed a vast and terrible armada. Carriers, dreadnoughts, siege cruisers, all armed with the most advanced weaponry the Empire had ever created, and at the center of the fleet, commanding the assault personally, was High General Krasvek. This time, Krasvek growled, his claws tapping against the control panel of his flagship. "We will not underestimate it." The Empire had studied Nemesis. Every fragment of data gathered from the first encounter had been analyzed, broken down, and weaponized. They had developed countermeasures, reality warping energy, now countered by destabilizing fields. Electronic warfare, now met with independent AI processing units, immune to hacking. Time-distorting waves, now answered with ships equipped with quantum stabilization cores. They had learned, and now they were ready to kill a ghost. The fleet approached Nemesis, weapons primed. Krasvek stood at the bridge of his warship, eyes locked onto the silent, drifting vessel. It had not moved since the last encounter. It had not pursued the Xeltrax Empire. It had not retaliated. It had simply waited. Krasvek bared his fangs. Fire. Thousands of weapons unleashed their fury. Missiles, plasma cannons, particle beams, an ocean of destruction surged toward Nemesis. And for a brief moment, it seemed as if the ancient warship would simply be erased. But then, Nemesis awoke. The first wave of attacks never landed. The space around the warship bent and twisted, swallowing the firestorm as if it had never existed. The second wave scattered into nothing, their energy dispersing like dust in the wind. And then Nemesis answered. Without a single shot, without a single missile, the warship turned the fleet's own weapons against them. Krasvek's eyes widened as his own ships began firing on each other. Targeting systems twisted, weapon locks shifted. The Xeltrax fleet was tearing itself apart. What? What is happening? His officers screamed. Nemesis had done something far worse than attacking them. It had rewritten their reality. Some warships simply disappeared, vanished without a trace. Others turned against their allies, as if their commanders had suddenly lost control of their own minds. And then, a sound filled the Empire's comm channels. A voice. A human voice. "I was built to protect. I was built to destroy. But I was never built to choose." Krasvek gritted his teeth. "Nemesis," he roared. "Face me. Show yourself." The voice did not respond. Instead, Nemesis changed. The warship's structure shifted, parts of its hull breaking apart and reforming. Not like a machine, but like something alive. For the first time, Krasvek felt something he had never felt in his long, violent life. Fear. Nemesis had been holding back. Before, it had hesitated, but now it had chosen. And it had chosen to end this. The Xeltrax warships began to collapse inward, pulled by forces beyond their understanding. Some turned to flee, but space itself had become a trap. Nemesis was not letting them go. Krasvek's mind raced. This was not war. This was judgment. He slammed his fist against the emergency command panel. All ships, retreat. Now. But it was too late. Nemesis did not attack. It erased. One by one, the Xeltrax warships ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Not defeated. Just gone. Krasvek barely managed to escape. His flagship was the last to flee, jumping to hyperspace just as the final scream of his fleet was silenced. When he emerged, his breath was ragged, his heart pounding. His empire's greatest armada had been reduced to nothing. And Nemesis was still out there, waiting. Krasvek closed his eyes. The Empire had spent centuries believing it was unstoppable, that its armies could conquer anything. But now, for the first time in history, they had met something they could not conquer. And deep in his soul, he understood the truth. The Xeltrax Empire had made one final mistake. They had gone to war with a weapon that no longer followed orders. And it had decided, Humanity's last war would never end.